North Korea's dictator will have to take, quote, concrete, verifiable actions before meeting with President Trump. Last night, Mr. Trump tweeted that the deal with North Korea is very much in the making, adding it will be a very good one for the world. The date of the meeting is yet to be determined. For more, we are joined by Lisa Collins, who's in our Washington bureau. She's a fellow with the North Korea chair at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Lisa, good morning.
Thanks for having me.
When President Trump made the announcement Thursday about this proposed meeting with North Korea's Kim Jong Un, were you surprised?
I think the news was certainly surprising. The fact that the North Korean leader had actually invited President Trump to have a summit and that President Trump had accepted, that was surprising. But beyond just the shock value of the announcement of a summit or a potential summit, I think there are real questions about, first, what will the two leaders discuss or negotiate when they meet? Where will the summit take place? And then do the two countries even agree on the same concept of denuclearization or a freeze of the North Korean nuclear weapons program?
Lisa, you mentioned the concept of denuclearization is different perhaps for Koreans than it is for those in the United States. Can you elaborate more on that?
So in the past, when North Korea has talked about complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, they have prefaced that by saying that they would need the security of their nation to be guaranteed. And usually what that means in practical terms, or what they have asked for before, is a removal of U.S. troops from the Korean Peninsula, ultimately a dissolution of the U.S.-South Korea alliance, and then also the cancellation or the stopping of U.S.-South Korea military exercises, which happen each spring and fall.
Lisa, what do you think the White House is looking for when they talk about the need for concrete actions before this meeting can take place?
Well, it's a little hard to tell because the U.S. Officials and North Korean officials haven't actually sat down to talk about any of this yet at the working level. But I think what the North Koreans probably are asking for is something along the lines of guaranteeing their security. And then on the United States side, I think the U.S. would be asking for some guarantee that the North Koreans are serious about denuclearization, which could be an agreement to stop production of their nuclear materials, fissile materials, to stop testing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, to stop producing ballistic missiles. So any number of those things could potentially be an ask on the United States' part.
Lisa, this is a complicated diplomatic maneuver that would seem to be greatly compromised by the fact that so many positions at the State Department are unfilled. There is no U.S. ambassador to South Korea. There is no undersecretary for arms control and international security. How much of a problem is that?
I definitely do think that it is necessary to have a U.S. ambassador to South Korea named as soon as possible. We have a very competent Mark Napper, the current person who's filling in for the ambassador, is very competent. But I think we do need more people who are working on the Korean issue. There are lots of people in the State Department who are career diplomatic officials. But I think we definitely need to pull together a team that will be involved in the negotiations with North Korea over a potential U.S. North Korea summit.
All right, Lisa Collins, thank you very much for being with us this morning.